So I was watching this movie. It's called Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was like, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. But in the beginning, there were these guys, and they were like, driving a garbage car. And so the girl's like, whoa, it's a garbage car. So they're like, garbage, and he gets the trash, and he's like, hey, you got the trash. And they're like, you're gonna die. And they showed him, and he was like, whoa, I got shot. But he was dead, so he didn't actually say that. And then it goes to this other scene where there's this guy, and he's walking around, and he's like, and then he gets shot for no reason. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger's there, and he's like, chopping wood or something. And then he's like looking at the blade of the axe, and there's this person sneaking up on him. So he turns around, and he's like, and it's his daughter. He's like, wow, his daughter. And then they have breakfast, and then they're like, an army helicopter's like, and it's like, and then his daughter's like, army helicopter, Dad, you can't go away again. And he's like, fine. So he like talks to the guy, and he's like, what's going on? And he's like, well, your guys are getting killed, so we hired some bodyguards. And there's these guys with like guns, and like, we have guns. And then so he's like, okay, are they good? And he's like, pretty good. And then, so he's like, K, and then he brings him in the house, and then these guys show up, and they're like, and then the bodyguard gets shot, and he's like, and it's crazy, because the bodyguard's supposed to be really, really good. So he's like, daughter, go hide in your room, or something like that. And then he's like, I'm gonna go get my rifle. And so he runs outside, and he goes into his woodshed, and he like presses his special key code buttons, and it opens his wall, and there's a bunch of guns, and he's like, whoa, I'm gonna get some guns. So he picked up a fat gun, and it's like massively awesome, and he runs outside, and he's like, and he kills like 300 guys with his own bare hands and a gun. And so he like climbs the roof, and he's like inside, and then there's this guy, and he's got a gun, and he's like, excuse me sir, but we're not gonna be able to talk about saving your daughter unless you put down that gun, right? And he's like, wrong, and bam, shoots him in the skull. And it was so crazy. So I was like, and then it was like, whoa. And so he's like, oh, where's my daughter? But his daughter wasn't there. So he's like, crap. And so he runs outside, and he's like chasing him down. He gets in his car, but the engine isn't in the car. So he gets like manly muscle strength, and he pushes it, and it's like, and it pushes it down the hill. It was so crazy. And then like guns, explosions and stuff, and then he has to get on a plane because he was captured, and he's got to kill this like Ukrainian guy or something, I don't even know, and he has to kill him because he was like saved his country, but he didn't. And then this guy's like, hey, kill him, and I'm gonna send 2 people with you. One of them's gonna get on the plane, and one of them's gonna get not on the plane, but they're both gonna call me, or your daughter dies. So he's like, hey, and he gets on the plane, and he's like, and then the one guy like goes and he's like, hey, he got on the plane. And he's on the plane, but it hasn't taken off yet. And he like cracks the guy in the face with an uppercut shot with the elbow. And he puts a pillow over his face, and he's like, hey, flight attendant lady, this guy's sleeping. And she's like, hey. And he's like, how long till flight ends? And she's like, 11 hours. So he's like, and he punches it into his watch. And then he like goes this sneaky, special, awesome stealth special forces way under the train, and then it's like, but it's actually a plane. So he like kicks down and gets out the landing gear, and he's like, whoa, I'm in the landing gear. So he hops out into this marshland that was conveniently placed right across the runway. And so he goes back to the airport, and the guy's there, and he's like, he got off the plane. And then he like walks up, and then the chick's like, he like hitting on this chick, and she's like, ew, you're ugly. So he goes up, and he like follows the chick back to her car, and he like takes the seat out and everything, and he's like, go, go, go. And she's like, where do I go? And he's like, follow that car. And she's like, hey. And so they follow him for a while, and then like explosions and stuff. I don't even know what happened, but explosions, I know that. And then suddenly they're in this hotel room, and they're like, this guy walks in, and he's like, I'm a Green Beret. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, I eat Green Berets for breakfast, and I'm really hungry today. So he kicks him in the face, and they have this epic battle. And then they like smash through this wall, and they're like, whoa, we just smashed through a wall. And the other guy's like, yeah. And then he kills him because he can. And then they get this information, and the lady was like a flight attendant, and she's like, I know where that is. That's an airport place. So he's like, Kay, do you know where it is? And she's like, yeah. And so they go there, and they're like, whoa, this is like a place with guns and stuff, and they're making like tanks and stuff, and it was insane. And so he's like, we gotta go somewhere, and she's like, where are we going? And she's like, shopping, and she's like, K. And then they go to this army surplus store, and he starts putting stuff in or they take a bulldozer, and they bulldoze the massive wall down. And because they had like chains and stuff, because it was like in the ghetto. And so yeah, and he's like, whoa, we just got inside. So they like put stuff in a shopping cart, and then he presses this special super secret button underneath the counter, and the wall opens and there's guns and stuff. So he puts them in there, and then the cops are like, you better stop right there. And he's like, okay. So he gets in the cop car and he like goes with him back to the cop place, but he doesn't actually, because the lady gets a rocket launcher and shoots the car, and he's like, boom. And then he gets out and he's like, hey, that was cool. She's like, yeah. And then she can fly a plane, so that's really cool because it's like plot conflict that they can't get to the island, but they can. And so she flies this plane, and they get there, and she's like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm gonna go explode stuff. And he does. So he gets in his boat, and he's like, and he gets on the island with like guns and stuff, and he paints his face, and he like goes up and he's like setting down C4 and killing people with his knife, and then like everyone's dead besides for a bunch of people, and so he explodes the place. It's like, and then he like moving, and he's like, and he's like, and he like goes up there and he just starts like shooting people like crazy. And then he runs out of ammo and grenades, so he climbs into this building. It's like really small, and it's like he's like hanging from the ceiling, but they don't know it, so they're like shooting the building. And then this guy walks in and he stabs him with a rake, and he's like, and then he like has these little things that he throws at people, and like festering blood from their necks. And then the little girl escapes because she's like cool like that. And then he's like, whoa, there's my daughter. So he like follows her, but they like go down this place, and there's this dude named Bennett, and he's like, I will kill you. And he's like, no, you won't. And so they had this epic combat, and they're like, hiya, and crap. And it was so awesome. I was like, whoa. Like, whoa.